Welcome to Salish Sasquatch, where we share evidence as well as encounters. I am very excited to be in Randall, Washington right now. This weekend is kicking off a Bigfoot themed event, and there's going to be a lot of vendors here and speakers, and we are going to show you what it looks like here in Washington State when it comes to the Bigfoot scene and how ingrained it is in the culture here.
So I remember watching Finding Bigfoot years ago, and Bobo was on there, and he goes, yeah, you gotta really pay attention to that triangle where it's between Mount St. Helens, Mount Adams, and Mount Rainier. That's like a sweet spot. Well, here we are, like smack dab in the middle of all of that.
This property is seriously incredible. Everybody's setting up for today. Speakers will be over there in that tent. A bunch of vendors are starting to pile in.
A little bit more Jen's side.
Even though this is the first year of this event, we're hoping for a good turnout. It's beautiful weather and you just can't beat these views.
My late husband and I were sitting on our upstairs deck. We have two decks. We were upstairs and hanging out on the big beanbag chairs and just enjoying our first summer at our property, and we heard a sound we've not heard before. And we, born and raised in the Pacific Northwest, we've camped, and my husband would go out hunting every year and spend a lot of time in the woods. We love that. And so we heard a sound and we're like, huh, what was that? Wasn't an owl. I mean, we know all the owls around here. Wasn't an elk. We started going down the list. It wasn't this, it wasn't that. We're like, we don't know what that was. Well, then we heard, and this is on a ridge, and we live between two ridges, okay, on the river, okay? And so we heard that sound. Well, then we heard another one on the opposite ridge, but it was female, and that was male. And there was no mistaking the male-female or the different pitch, right? But we just thought it was very, very interesting. Very interesting. And after I've heard friends say that they've experienced similar, you know, or the rocks coming at them or the pine cones or whatever, we didn't have any of that, but the sounds were something that were undescribable as far as our life experience.
Do you know good stories from
all
people?
Kinds of stories.
What's some of the best stories you've heard from the area?
Well, I'll tell you one, then I'll set up, and then I'll do that. The recently State Patrol coming from Mineral, Washington to Morton, 10:30 at night, was hit a fog bank at the pass. Could see about 200 feet in front of him, so he was doing about 20 miles an hour. It was really bad. Somebody was walking just next to the white line, so he pulled the car over and got out and walked up. And he's 6'4", and he said whatever it was over 8 feet tall, and he thinks he saw the Sasquatch. Never seen anything like that in his life. Turned, glanced at him, took 4 or 5 steps, and went up in the timber. He came in the bow shop because he doesn't believe in Bigfoot, but he said, I think I just saw what everybody's seeing. Something's out there. I saw it. Yeah, so those are the stories you hear. Out here, this is a really good area for it. A couple of my friends from the church were fishing out on the Cowlitz, 7 o'clock in the morning, and they had one stand just across the river next to a tree for about 10 minutes and watch them. So I could not believe I saw a Bigfoot. Yeah.
Was he a believer when they saw it?
No, him and his wife, either one.
And it just watched them.
Just stood there and stared at him. Another elk hunter had one 75 yards from him. He didn't even know it was there. He was hunting by himself, and he hiked back in about 4 miles. He said he just turned and saw something standing by a tree. He thought, is that another hunter? And he started looking, and that thing was staring at him just like a mountain lion would. And I said, did you even think about shooting? He said, all I can tell you is the shock and the way it looked at him just said it was time for him to get out of there. And he said that was the weirdest thing he'd ever seen. So something's out there. Yeah.
I'm Steve. I'm from live in South Bend, Washington. This is the first event I've attended. I've always had some type of interest in it. Even my dad would always say we ought to go up for a trip in the woods. Maybe we'll see Sasquatch today and stuff like that. So even growing up, I was kind of exposed to the idea of it. A couple years ago, I saw something I can't explain cross Highway 12. It was in April, I think it was, at 2023. And probably about a quarter mile ahead of me, there's this figure. It was before the Brady exit. It was just this glided across the scene, one solid color, tall. You could see the arms, but it wasn't running, but it was to cross 4 lanes plus the medium and the side stuff. How fast that went across. It wasn't what I've seen most people can do at that speed. I've been up close to where, on the field of NFL players, linemen, how fast they are, but this just from a perspective, it just like this, it was across the road.
The MC, the man himself, Jimmy Towngate.
Thank you. I'm excited.
And look at the view, Jimmy.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
This is easy for you to do, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Just clamshells out. Voila. We didn't see anything here or anything.
You actively research this area.
We've done a lot of stuff along Highway 12.
What do you think of it?
It's one of my favorite areas besides Gifford Pinchot. I mean, we just camped one night in one of our favorite areas. But this, getting down on the river like this, there's potential for tracks, for them being drawn in. I'm excited for tonight.
Next to the tree. This is what defined that thing. But when I got up there, I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it.
Because my fire district was this line right here.
I know the audience is made up of believers, knowers, those that are curious, maybe those that are skeptical. We have a great lineup of speakers today and tomorrow to hopefully answer some of your questions, share evidence, and bring to light this tremendous mystery that we have.
We'd be out in the river and rocks, big boulders, not big like this, would land kerplunk in the river beside you. And you look around and you go, okay, well, maybe an elk kicked it off the bank, but I don't see any elk. But you rationalize. You just try to come up with whatever you can to make things understandable. So I went to work, the little store in Greenwater, and when the locals would come in, I'd started asking, you ever see or hear anything weird out there? And I was surprised at how many of them actually had a story or an experience that they didn't want to talk about to anybody else. If the door opened to the store, that was it, they were done talking. There were a lot of people that had experiences but didn't even realize it until the discussion began. It was like, oh, you mean they throw things? Well, there was this time we thought it was just kids fooling around, things like that, where people had experiences that they didn't understand. So we had the idea of getting these little cat toys that are flashy balls that will, with movement, they'll go off for 10 seconds. So I started putting those along the bank of the river. The first time we did that, one of the balls was picked up and moved 8 feet along the riverbank and set back down while we're all sitting there watching. different balls will go off around different places. You know, like this one here will go off, and then 10 minutes later, the one over there will go off.
So he pulled off there. He had to go to the bathroom really bad. And it was, of course, it's 11:30 at night. He pulls in and steps out to water the concrete and go through those motions. And he's part of the way through with that program, and he looks up, and there's a Bigfoot standing there from me to the guy in the front here, just looking at him. And I think that would have been enough of a shock to finish any watering program that he had going right there on the spot, if you know what I mean. Anyway, so he's looking at that, and the animal, and I'll call him an animal, he was looking right back at him, and they stared at each other for a few seconds, and not very long. And Tom, that's my brother-in-law, he made a dive for the front seat, get in the car rather, and the animal nonchalantly turned around, stepped back over the trail that he came in on, and left.
Look how milky this water looks. It's incredible. Comes directly from Mount Rainier.
Alan, what is it that makes the river that color?
I believe it's what's called rock flour from the water coming off the glaciers. It's the fine sediment of the rocks as they break down from friction.
Good.
So I went up there, and at that point I thought, you know what, Bigfoot is probably real, but I'm not sure. And we spent 4 days up there, and the first couple nights I had heard things that I had never heard in the outdoors before. Knocks against trees, and I'm going, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just heard that. And I looked at the reaction to those people, and it was normal for them. They're like, did you record that? You know, they're just on their game.
Why'd you decide to come to this event?
Well, Jonathan's told me so much about this entire area of Washington. Packwood all the way to Morton. I mean, he was saying you can hear a Sasquatch, you know, most nights of the year. So I wanted to come out here just to see what it's like. I've been to Mount Rainier, but I haven't come this far. I've come as far as Packwood. So this was a little bit further, and this campground is just awesome. It's just this huge, huge property in this valley.
Look at the teeth. Do these look like the teeth, ladies and gentlemen, of a gorilla? How about an orangutan, big canines? See any chimpanzee canines here? What do you notice about these teeth? They're kind of flat, aren't they, all the way across, like a human being or a horse. So for me to say, yeah, there's an ape that's evolved upright and another 40 human characteristics versus, yeah, there's a hominid that happens to have retained a few ponga characteristics, but a human. It's far easier for me to go with that second one. I'm just touching up some color on this.
Did you draw that?
Yep. The patient described it, and I drew it under the patient's supervision. Go ahead. You can take
This was their encounter that they had?
Yeah, I was watching it pull fish out of the lake.
What state?
Alaska. And it's right at Carlana
We're
Lake.
gonna get started with the next. We're going to take a 5-minute break and get the TV set up for Salis Sasquatch, and we'll be back.
He got off to the side of the tree and he started crouching down. And the last time that I glanced over at him, like he was, had to have been laying on the ground. But what I could see was, a conical head. I couldn't make out facial features very well because the face was dark, but there was also enough shadows like in the area. but I could see where the sun was coming through, and like the back of his hair on his back was like clumped together, and it was a reddish brown.
Why are you into Bigfoot?
They came to me, and it's just been 52 years of finding out why.
Washington State?
Actually, no, Michigan. I was 10, and I had a female come to me at my grandmother's, kind of curious that I was there. Grandma lived on a lake, she's about 20 miles from my parents, and as I got to be a teenager, I would ride out on Friday night after school with my bike, and I would fish at night because I like bullheads, and I like to fight. So I'd be out in my rowboat, 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, and I would see her eyes in the woods next to my grandmother's, because my grandma's was the last house on the row, and she was in those woods.
Eagle tracks, how cute. So big, aren't they?
Yeah, they're scary to have one like on your arm or whatever. So I'm talking to this young man, and he's like, I want to believe that Bigfoot is real and that it's a physical being, like an animal. And he goes, but the only thing that ever makes me think maybe it's not, maybe it's supernatural, is the calorie issue. And this young man is from Pennsylvania, so, you know, he might not have the same context that I do, having lived out here my whole life. And I go, well, you know, out in, you know, we're talking about what, a 600 to 1,000 pound large animal, right? And I said, well, we have those. We have bears. We used to have grizzly bears. We still have black bears. We have elk. That eagle's singing. It's pretty. I said we have elk. We have moose in some areas of the state. We used to have moose in more areas of the state. So I said there is a precedent for large omnivorous and even herbivorous animals maintaining a high degree of muscle mass and just body mass in general out here. And I think that, so we talk about all the food sources from, like, you know, there's fish runs, which aren't what they used to be. So it's, you know, I don't know if that is reflected in like lesser populations of Sasquatches, because we don't even know where they're at right now. But yes, sure, there's fish, but there's also like lots of little bugs and little freshwater clams and things in the water. And there are roots and there are tubers and there's a ton of vegetation that's edible. And to us, we might look at this forest and go, well, I can't eat any of that. Well, no, because you're a human and you have to cook your food and chew it up with your tiny little baby teeth. But if you're a large primate with gigantic molars that can masticate really tough fibrous vegetation, and then you, like other primates, may even be a hindgut fermenter, where you're fermenting vegetative matter in your gut for a longer period of time, which allows you to then extract more nutrients the same way that like an elephant or a horse does, I think you have no problem.
He was kind of like the designated driver, and he was a little bit older than the second guy, Eric Apple. And Dick Hancock told me that he was actually driving Eric around before he dropped him back to his house, his parents' house, to sober up a little bit. And they get to this intersection in Fife, just north of Tacoma, in a sort of residential area. And right there by the stop sign, there is this big Bigfoot-like creature that's tall enough where its head is up above the stop sign.
I have a project down in southwest Oregon in Curry County, and it was a series of events about between 1880 going through 1920, where there was an area down about 60 miles north of the California border, about 20 miles in from the ocean, and the area had turned into what they ended up calling the gold rush of southwest Oregon. There was gold discovered up there in about 1875, and not a lot of people moved into the area to do gold mining, but enough so that this very, very limited area called Thompson Flat, at one point around 1880s, there were about 40 miners up there. They were not working one individual claim, they were working their individual placer claims, and they would all camp out together in, you know, sort of a makeshift tent city. And in those years, the miners started seeing a creature that was about 6 to 6.5 feet tall, primarily covered with yellowish blonde hair. These were not passive, just fleeting sightings. These were very aggressive sightings. A couple of the miners came back up on their camp, and one of these creatures was tearing their whole camp apart and charging them and yelling at them, and one of their dogs got killed. Other encounters where people would be going down to get fish, and there'd be a big creature out there, big Sasquatch-like creature, yelling at them and threatening them, rock throwing. It got to a point where one of the miners, a guy named Mike Madigan, he had a claim, but he was mainly like the camp huntsman. He would go and hunt game and then trade it for tools or other stuff. He was out with his 2 dogs, and they comes up on a hill, and there's one of the creatures there. One of the dogs takes after it, and the individual picks up the dog, throttles it, beats it to death, and throws it down the hill. The second dog runs and goes after the creature. Madigan starts shooting it repeatedly. Seemingly, his bullets had no effect. The second dog is killed as well, and Madigan gets out of there. There was a period of about 18 months around the late 1880s, early 1890s, where one at a time 4 miners started showing up dead. The first one was John Jensen, and everyone's back at camp at night, and where's John? He's not in his tent. We better go check. So they go up to his claim, and there's John dead with his head bashed in with a bloodied rock, supposedly the weapon. One at a time, there are 4 of them that just ended up disappearing, being later found dead. The last one was Madigan, because everyone got scared and they got the hell out of there. And Madigan was only up there by himself. He didn't come back into town for about 3 or 4 weeks. And his friend went to go up and check on him, and he finds this large pile of rocks that are piled oddly. And Ramsey clears it away, and there's Madigan dead, just beaten to a pulp. So it wasn't until about 1904 where a different miner came in named Harrison, and he built a cabin on his claim in 1904. And his friend and another person were helping him with the mine, and they were in the cabin at night. And some distinctive parts of the story is that the front door of this cabin faced an apple tree, and they kept saying that whatever was coming in from the hill, up the hill from the apple tree. The cabin starts getting beat up, pounding on it at night, and they open up the door, and there's this big blonde hair-covered creature walking up like a man. They take shots into it, doesn't affect the creature at all. The creature turns and it just leaves. Happens again, the same cabin about a week later, where there were 2 of the Harrison boys with one of the miners, and this time they're ready. They get one bang on the cabin, they open up the door, and they're coming from the apple tree. There's this big creature, and they bam, blam, 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 and it doesn't affect them at all. And they eventually ended up giving up that claim and never coming back. These stories really, really intrigued me, particularly since it involved gold, it involved a cabin being attacked by a Sasquatch. And so I went down there about 2 years ago or so, and we were able to find the cabin site. We found the foundation of it and found a bullet casing inside the perimeter of the cabin with, it was right inside the perimeter, just inside the front door and facing the apple tree, which is still there. So all of this evidence, I do this because it keeps on adding to the database of Bigfoot research, of Bigfoot data. The reason why is that because when and if there's definitive empirical truth, some sort of empirical evidence about the existence of the species, the next thing that the questions are going to be, well, how long is this? What other information do you have? How long has this been going on? And that's why I study the history and look for this physical evidence of what's going on.
I believe Sarah and Jonathan have the first vocalization on their YouTube channel from a trip we did. The second one is not on there, but this was recorded. The first one I'm going to play was August 11th. The next one was August 12th. Both around 2:33 in the morning, roughly, from the same area, the same ridge. This is 2 individuals. We can tell it by visually looking based on the mic directions.
all the way from the butt crack up the spine, all the way to the back of the neck, where her hair stood up. Then look at her inside view. Look at those arms, those legs, and that face. Do you think he drove 14 hours from Yakima, Washington to Orleans, California to reach them and then turned back around and drove 14 hours home? Does that make sense to anybody? Is there anybody that could buy that tomb?
This is a drawing of a Sasquatch that you saw.
Yes.
And who did this drawing?
Alex Evans did the drawing. She's an artist from Indiana.
How tall was he?
He's 9 foot 3 inches tall.
Those feet are how big?
17 inch.
So that shoulder mass is a good 4.5, 5 feet?
It's good 5 feet across, yeah.
But I was born and raised for the first part of my life in our native Indian village known as Yalise or Lurt Bay off northeastern Vancouver Island. And I was born into a family where it was all about our culture, right from the foods we ate to the celebrations we participated in and learned to dance and everything. And as a young boy, you know, you'd misbehave and you would hear, Tommy, you smarten up, you behave yourself. Chonacha, the Sasquatch, the female one is watching all around. She can't touch you, but if you misbehave, you act up, you don't do your chores, you whine, you temper tantrum, you're lazy, don't do your schoolwork, Junacha is going to come at night with big hairy arm and reach in where you're sleeping and grab you. And she'll rub spruce sap into your eyes so you're blind. And she'll throw you in a basket on her back or into a cedar fiber woven bag. And she's going to throw you over her shoulder in that basket and take you deep into the forest, like over there, and up that high mountain to her invisible home. That's why we can't find Junacha, the Sasquatch. And that's where she's going to boil you up and eat you, so you behave yourself. So hearing that, it terrified me. And I remember getting in trouble, sent to my room, and I kept thinking, gee, I don't want to go to sleep. Junacha's going to come get me. And a while later, I'm playing with the kids in Alert Bay, and we go down to the south side of the island to the Chinese convenience store at that time. And we bought our candies and ice cream, and we were playing on the beach. And all of a sudden, I looked up, and the sun was going down the mountains of Vancouver Island to the west. And I knew right there, it's getting dark. I'm misbehaving. And as fast as I could, I ran down the street until I got to the shipyards. And I stopped, and I peeked around the building. There was the graveyard and all the memorial totem poles with thunderbirds, eagles, whales, grizzly bears. And at the base of 5 of them, outstretched arms, big breasts, puckered up lips, sleepy eyes, the Chonacha. And I kept thinking, oh no, that Chonacha is going to come out now and grab me. And I ran till a car honked the horn and said, Tommy, get in. What are you doing out at dark? I jumped in my family member's car and I was crying away because that's how terrifying Chonacha was to me, the Sasquatch. And later on in life, I would start commercial fishing at 10 years old. When I got to be a teenager, I got on the bigger boats. And in the summer, we'd go after salmon on our seine boats up all through the British Columbia coast. I would go to communities like Clem2, Hartley Bay, Owikano, Rivers Inlet, Namu, and even further north. But every time I was there on the dock or walking through the villages you can only access by float plane or boat, I would talk to the people and I would say, what do you know about the Sasquatch? Oh, we call our Sasquatch books. Or they'd say, oh, as Haidas, we call the Sasquatch Gogi. And they would share with me all their stories, but also their encounters. So that when I got older, when I was commercial fishing, I would go to a place called Kitkatla and I'd leave the dock and I'd walk up this trail and work my way up the mountain until this teenage kid caught up to me and he goes, Mister, turn around, get back down to the water, to the boats. I said, why? He goes, they're here. We don't go up there unless there's more than 2 or 3 of us, and we always have a gun. There are ones here, they won't attack you, but they will get aggressive. So I knew what he was talking about. I went back to the boat. But when I would go to some of these communities, and even throughout my life, I'd get to go to celebrations called Hubiye. I would go to potlatches in my tribe and others. And that potlatch or Hubiye is where the chief and his family will share with you crests that belong to their family. Quiquicodala in my tribe, Thunderbird. Kulus, cousin to the Thunderbird, my family crest. Kela, the grizzly bear, clay. And then you would also see the books or the Hawakwis, or in my tribe, we witness in Potlatch, the great Chonachwa, the highest ranked crest of the Kwakwakiwak people. So when we wear it on our tunic, like I'm doing here, I'm sharing with you one of my family's crests, but the highest ranked one, and it's like having a Rolex or a Mercedes-Benz. I'm proclaiming my family's wealth by having title to the Chonachwa crest. And that's why at Potlatch, you will always see different crest figures be danced. But before we get there to the Potlatch and Junachwa, I'll talk about the Potlatch where you'll see Bakwus. Now, Bakwus is the little person, the little people, stick people. But in my people, we call it Bakwus. It'll come on the floor and it moves fast like a bird, and it's always got its hand in front of its face. And when you see it reaching on the ground with its hands or its toes, that's what it's going for. Choli, cockles, a type of shellfish or clam. And it's the favorite food of the Bakwus as well as Junachwa. But the Bakwus, when it comes out and it's showing you what an ancestor witnessed when he was on a shellfish beach, seeing this little hair-covered creature looking like a Sasquatch, but kind of greenish and always hiding behind its face. And we refer to the Bakwus as the keeper of the ghost world, the chief of the ghost world. For when you don't listen to the lessons on how to travel with a canoe or swim across a river or lake, and the storms or the tide rips or the current and the rapids get you, you drowned. You failed your teachings. And your human soul is owned by that little hair-covered creature called Bakwus, the chief of the ghost world. And you're in limbo land. You're in like a purgatory, but of turmoil. And you'll never get to see Ikekekame, the creator, in his heaven. So that's what we talk about with Bakwus. So warn your young people, don't dance with the Bakwus. It's a beautiful dance to see in Potlatch, but it's an evil, evil thing all around us. And that's what the Bakwus is designed for our people to pass that teaching down.
But then, you know, the Doobie Brothers and shit. No, I'm going to talk about my favorite band, the Memphis Jug Band. The last recording session in 1928, these guys had played for a change in the Memphis Park and shit. You know, they were just trying.
This is the last day of the event. It has been an awesome weekend, and it is an absolutely gorgeous morning.
Oh, I said I was talking to a few men beforehand, and this is a common pattern where they're like, I tried, you know, you go ahead and give it a shot. And I'm like, oh, I will. I know this river pretty well. And generally speaking, in my experience, because I'm like an ultra-light elitist, is generally I think people use line that's too thick in diameter, and they use lures that are too heavy. I always tell guys, like, lighten up, lighten up, lighten up. And they think, you know, bigger lure, bigger fish. Not necessarily for, like, salmonids. You know, you can catch a big old salmon on an itty-bitty little spinner.
And you already got one.
I did. I have another one on right. Oh, no, that was a snag. Yeah, I did. I caught one small, like I'm talking like a 6 or 7 inch northern pike minnow, which many people would consider a trash fish, but I say there's no such thing.
Why are they over there?
Okay, you're asking why are the fish over there? So the fish over there are pike minnow. Pike minnow are really just a great big minnow. They can get huge, but they're little detrivores, they're predators. They're looking for any little stuff that might have come out of this current and gotten into this backwater and is just kind of dead and still has calories in it. So they're just kind of going around like a little Roomba vacuum, trying to scoop up whatever might be falling out of the vegetation or might have just gotten caught up in a little back eddy. And they just particularly like kind of still, slow water. They can hang out in the current, they will, but especially when they're little, they like to hang back where it's not so strong. They don't have to expend as much energy to get the calories they need.
I've never encountered anything like that because I don't draw conclusions. I'm paid professionally to draw conclusions, and I have to. But as far as Sasquatch goes, everything's open. Every single thing is open, and I don't draw a conclusion, and therefore, I haven't accepted anything as truth, and so I'm not fooled by it. I'm not fooled by it. All evidence needs to be considered. There was a great speaker on a circuit for a while, and he was about 4.5 feet tall, about 4.5 feet around, and he was from East Texas, and he delivered all of his speeches like a drill sergeant, and his name was Walt. And how much evidence is enough? Dramatic pause. You can never have enough evidence.
And one who saw one through the scope of his rifle and chose not to shoot. The interesting thing is the guy that chose not to shoot said that before that, he thought he'd pull the trigger on one, if he ever saw one.
Yeah.
And when he did, it changed his mind. He said it was standing still, and he actually saw its eyes slowly blink. And once he saw that, he thought it was too human for him.
Hey, I think I appreciate the question, but I think the question is moot. I think that going down the line of us needing a body or verifiable DNA as being the golden ticket that's going to solve everything, I think it's kind of misleading. I don't think we need a body. I don't think we absolutely need DNA evidence to come up with some sort of empirical evidence. We have enough evidence right now. We have lots and lots of all kinds of varied evidence. And I think that our goal, at least my goal, is to keep working.
Another thing that I've thought about too is even if you get the body, you're going to have a body but zero answers. We're not going to know anything about them. We're not going to know territory, gestation. We're not going to know anything about their what they do. You were too young to remember the northern spotted owl in Oregon, but when that happened, it kind of destroyed Oregon's economy overnight because this endangered owl was found. And I feel like with Sasquatch, I feel like we might not even be able to camp anymore. Like it could shut down a lot of things. So I'm okay with it being a mystery, and whoever is here to listen, whoever wants to know, then they're the lucky ones, but to anybody else, oh well. So you grew up nearby here?
I grew up across the valley on the other side, on the south side. And my husband grew up here. This was his family's property. His great-grandfather homesteaded this.
And how many acres?
There's about 120 on this property, and then we bought adjacent to it. So we run cattle on the other side.
Do you believe in Bigfoot?
I do.
Have you ever had any encounters or heard them?
I had an encounter that I can't explain what it was. I don't know that it was Bigfoot, but it was suspicious. So.
What happened?
Oh, we had been camping, and then some signs that I had put up for friends to come up to the campsite. We heard something around the campsite, and then the next morning the signs were down, and one of them had a small tree, a dead tree, had been pushed directly over.
Let's hear it, Cindy. Really? Okay,
Yeah.
well, I never talked to anybody about anything, but you record now? Okay. This lady's asked me to talk about seeing a Bigfoot. I live here in Randall, Washington. We have a big yard, and I was in the laundry room. We have a big window on our laundry room back door. And I just was looking out that window like I do a lot, and just looking out over the lawn and the backwoods there. And I saw what I now know, and I'm amazed how they look. Just like these cutouts that are all around. these pictures and stuff, they're pretty spot on of what they do look like. What I saw was a black-haired, he was hairy, and his head was like tipped down, kind of about down like this. He was walking. Thickness, this guy, oh my gosh, really strong looking, even though he had a lot of hair on him.
We can go to that one if you want to know about that one.
Sure.
This is something I came up with a couple weeks ago. Little Bigfoot, big feet. This is him, he's 4 foot tall, he's got 4 feet of feet. And this is him in the fern just at the top of the ferns. The story behind him, the myth I came up with, was that Bigfoots, 95% of Bigfoots, they're 4 foot tall and under, but they leave big tracks. So everybody sees these great big tracks and they're always looking up for 8 or 9 foot Bigfoots. There are bigger Bigfoots, but it's just like basketball players and tall people. There's not as many as them as their normal size. So I tell people if they start looking at the tops of the ferns, they can see their heads bobbing. But you will see a big one once in a while.
My uncle, who owned a cottage or campground area, plus he had a store, and he had the trick where he would throw box spring mattresses in the river, and the fly fishermen's lures would get hooked on there. So he would go out in the evening and he'd pick all the lures off. Well, my cousin and I would go out with him on one night, and we got chased off.
Bill and Rhonda, they're also both on our board. Rhonda's the vice president with me.
Yes, I would like
One of the sponsors of the event is our friend Mitch Moberg, who owns Bigfoot Treasures in Chehalis. We will link the address down below, but if you are looking for awesome gifts, this is definitely the place to go.
Hi, Mitch.
Hello.
So what brings you to the event this weekend? Your love for Sasquatch?
I just gotta clear my head for just a minute. What brings me here? I mean, the whole idea of having a camp out and a Bigfoot festival with speakers and everyone being together at once instead of being in hotel rooms. It's just, whoever planned this was brilliant.